Welcome everyone to a brand new episode of the Jams and Tea Podcast 1991 Retrospective, where we cover albums in the year of our Lord 2021 that are turning 30 big important albums from a big important year. And this week we are going to be talking about U2's Achtung Baby. Tyler, what the fuck is an Achtung Baby?
So the thing to be aware of at this point in the retrospective, and I guess at this point in the history of our podcast, is that what I think makes our podcast dynamic so good is that we have tastes that align to a reasonably similar extent, such that we can, build on each other's enthusiasm for records or hatred for records, and also play off of it with our own kind of unique spins and stuff, and our own sort of perspectives and things that inform where we come from. And then also, we don't agree completely to the extent that we're always this uniform front that are always just kind of like echoing each other and the things that we say about records. And there's a good mixture, I think, of general healthy agreement where we each have different perspectives that feed into that, and general healthy disagreement where we each have unique perspectives that feed into that. And so I think U2 are a curious case, because U2 are one of the biggest bands in the world, or at least were one of the biggest bands in the world in 1991. And of course, we have to kind of contextualize all the albums in this retrospective and think about the bands and where they were at this particular point in time. And U2 were pretty huge. U2 are an Irish arena rock band. That feels like a poor descriptor of them, but they slowly built up a sound and a following throughout the 80s that made them one of the biggest and most anthemic and sort of most captivating bands in the world, especially if you're a kind of person who is a sucker for the kind of rock mythos and the idea of the bands that are full of personalities that are larger than life, who are making music that sounds larger than life. And that gradual ascendance, guided by Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois, the production duo who helped them out with two of their most seminal records in that period, The Unforgettable Fire and The Joshua Tree, and of course are back again on this record as well, as I'll get into. But that team of U2, Eno, and Lanois worked together to build the sound to the point where The Joshua Tree essentially functioned as this peak that U2 reached in terms of popularity and in terms of perfecting and honing this particular anthemic rock sound that they had been searching for, that they had reached in fits and spurts on albums leading up to it. And those albums essentially have some of the best songs ever, like Sunday Bloody Sunday, Bad, like so many great songs from that early era, but no albums that are front to back amazing, in my opinion, until you get to Joshua Tree, which is a stone cold classic. I don't think it's a perfect album. I think it has a few songs that are less essential on it, and I think it's certainly more consistently within one particular atmospheric mode that does limit its staying power to a certain extent. But it also has some of the best songs the band ever made, some of the most iconic songs the band ever made, and it has this sound. Most importantly, the Joshua Tree has this sound that's so U2. It's so unmistakable. It's this atmospheric sound with this very particular guitar tone that The Edge essentially honed and perfected across the 80s, in tandem with this searching, I guess, incredibly uplifting and powerhouse vocal presence that is Bono, this larger than life figure who is understandably divisive for the, I guess, portent and hugeness that he brings into his performances and music. And, to the extent that sometimes U2 have been known to go too far and really exceed the, I guess, boundaries of taste. Although they didn't really do that on the Joshua Tree. The Joshua Tree's beauty is in what a restrained record it is in spite of those things, but still having those moments like When the Streets Have No Name that really bowl you over. But that was a huge record for them. That was their OK Computer in a certain sense, before OK Computer was a thing. That was their, I'm trying to think of a comparable example, but it was their big moment of arrival, their Who's Next, if you want, their Wish You Were Here. Their Dark Side of the Moon, I think, would be a more fitting way of describing it. So yeah, big moment, big record. And so Achtung Baby comes 3 years later in 1991, and it is one of the classic examples of a follow-up to a classic album that completely refutes the direction of that classic album, or like complicates the band's sound in a way that's deliberately meant to say, hey, you thought we were like this, we're actually a lot more complicated than that. And so it's very much one of those reactions to a big breakout moment record. I think Jake had a term for this recently in one of our recent videos that I think he got from a Mike the Snare video that I can't remember what the term was for, like an album that's like a reaction. Or anyway, that sort of album is what Achtung Baby is. And Achtung Baby is best appreciated, or at least best understood, in the lens of where U2 had come from, where U2 were at, and what this kind of represents as a moment for them in the band, this sonic direction that the record takes, this absolute left turn, without disregarding all or even many of the hallmarks of what make U2 recognizable and powerful, but lathering them in this particularly, I guess, distorted, very studio heavy, busy, incredibly dense soundscapes that were painstakingly worked on by Eno and Lanoy. To deliberately create the sense of claustrophobic intensity as a counter to the atmospheric vibrance of the Joshua Tree. So that's where we're at. And Achtung Baby is what it is. Now, for the U2 fans watching, I love this album. This is my favorite U2 album. I have very, very fond and meaningful feelings about this record, and I'm going to try and express them as best as I can. I love this record for so many different reasons. I love this record for a lot of different things about it that really captivate me and stick with me and enrapture me. But U2 are a textbook example of a band that are made to divide this particular podcast, because their sense of scale, their sense of grandiosity, their sense of, self-importance even. I don't think that's unfair to say, and I don't think that me saying that you two have a sense of self-importance detracts from my love, because the sense of grandiosity and like intensity and like being the biggest band in the world is part of the appeal of U2 for me. The way that they lean into that, the way that they use that and soar with that is part of the appeal to me, and I suppose to a lot of fans as well. But it's like a fucking anathema. It's like a cilantro gene type of thing to other people in this podcast who I think, have a very particular perspective on the kind of, I suppose, scale and vision with which U2 see themselves. Which is interesting, to be honest, because I don't see U2 as all that dissimilar from a modern band like Gang of Youths, for instance, but that's a conversation for another day. So I'm going to step aside at this point, and I'm going to circle back to my detailed feelings on this record, because I don't think there's much point in me going sort of back and forth with these guys, because they have a particular perspective on U2 and on this record that is going to be quite distinct from mine. So I think it'll be interesting to see how our perspectives align, don't align, and kind of feed into and respond from each other. So yeah. What do you guys think of Achtung Baby? What was your experience like listening to this? What are your preconceptions or feelings about U2 going into it? How are they reflected in this album? What works? What doesn't work? Take it away.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess before going into this album, and I want to say I listened to it with an open enough mind, because despite my preconceptions of the band members and the band themselves, I think it is only fair that I treat this album the same way I treat every other album for this podcast, every other album, even not for this podcast, of giving it the fair shake, its fair time of day. And all that being said, before I even listened to this, I in my head had built up this meta narrative, this kind of almost negative, this kind of spiteful social relationship with U2, with Bono and The Edge and whatnot. Yeah.
Oh no.
and that's just the going into it. My perception of U2 was always these like really pretentious, overblown, overstated kind of rock band, like the kind of band who would like avoid the label of a rock band. We are a transcendental experience. We are U2. But that was all just my preconceptions going into this. Nothing to state, probably more to state something less of the band themselves. And I think the general perception I have of them, and undoubtedly the general perception a lot of people on the internet also have of the group.
Yeah, and I think
Because-
that kind of perception pervades the way that U2 are thought about and discussed today. They're particularly the idea of this operatic rock band that are like so laser focused on the possibilities of what a rock band can be is so fundamentally uncool in today's climate. Like it can't be overstated enough how out of step the idea of U2 and what U2 were in the late 80s and early 90s is just not at all where popular music is at, where popular music perception and conversation and discussion is, such that when I listen to this record, I feel like I'm transported to a different time, not just through the music, but through the way that it makes me feel. And so, yeah, I think that ideas of what U2 are and ideas of why U2 are unfashionable or uncool or fundamentally, too much, excessive in a way that's overbearing, I think do tend to dominate discussions to the extent that the music itself is rarely talked about. So I am looking forward to actually hearing what you guys have to say about the music.
We will get to the music. I just wanted to make that part perfectly clear, and that the discussion would not be complete without it.
Agreed.
I'm glad you made that point, just because I was going to lead off with the fact that, like, I understand that, like, fundamentally, U2 are such an easy band to dislike. You have the sort of presence of somebody like Bono, who, like, honestly, like August kind of said, like, he's got this, like, largely unsubstantiated but still, like, pretentious mythos that, like, pervades him, that I don't really think is founded in any kind of fact at all, but nonetheless still continues. Maybe we have South Park to thank for that.
I think
That's
a really good
nonetheless.
point, Jake. I think a lot of, and this is not to excuse Bono, because I think in recent years in particular, especially with the whole like iTunes, iPhone, give you an album thing, has colored perception and makes it difficult to, I guess, disregard those kinds of perceptions going into evaluating their earlier work. But it has to be said that despite their ambition and their size and scale, like a lot of these feelings and ideas about what U2 were trying to do, or how U2 regarded themselves, were very projected. And I don't think necessarily all that fair.
Yeah, and I don't want to give the impression that any of my feelings are rooted in any of that, because, as you know, as funny as it might be to engage in such topics of conversation occasionally, or to just throw shade just because, easy target and all that, when I want to listen to an album, I'm going to approach it from this perspective of, well, I've only heard singles from this band. I've never heard a full album. It's not true. I technically heard the Joshua Tree a very long time ago I don't remember like anything about it, but it wasn't because of the music. It was just because I was too young. But I just sort of approached it just like, I'm just going to approach this like U2 is a rock band. And I know, I get it. It's like they're a band where a member calls themselves The Edge. And like, that's really all you need to say. Cause like, I mean, fuck you. Shut up. Go fucking fuck yourself. But
yeah,
more to the point, the album is...
one of the assholes is Bono, so that doesn't help too. Like, get a fucking last name.
It definitely fucking doesn't. And also those fucking sunglasses. God, it's like the epitome of like rock band. I mean, like every time I've seen a picture of Bono, he looks like a toned down Garth Marenghi. Like it's like you could just see it in his outfit and his sunglasses and his fucking voice. but and that's one thing I have to make abundantly clear to everybody here, that I'm not going to belabor this. I'm just going to use it as a primer for what I have to say, and I can't even really explain why, but you have to know this because it's vital to understanding my thoughts on this album, is that I can't I can't fucking stand Bono's voice. And of course, you're probably wondering, Jake, why the fuck is this voice so grating to you? This is like the most whatever rock band dude voice ever. And you know what? You're right. I really don't have a reason. I listen to this and I'm transported into a world of uncool dad rock. I'm listening to this and it's like fucking NyQuil. I hear his voice and I'm just instantly like, oh God, I feel like every part of me is rejecting this. It's like a fucking it's like my fucking immune system is like, no, don't let this in. Get it away. And I don't have an explanation for that. So, you can completely disregard my opinion on this, but I want to just say that so I don't have to anymore. And you all just need to know that that's a bit of a ceiling I have. I don't like his. There are moments where he's a compelling vocal presence on here. And the keyword there is kind of moments, because there's a lot of the time where I genuinely just think the guy sounds like it's sometimes the man just doesn't sound like he wants to be singing. There is so much on this album, and we've structured this in such a way so that we can sort of expel the different opinions that we have, so Tyler can go after this. And I had such a hard time reckoning with how I was going to go about this, because I just Tyler is my friend. I love Tyler. I don't want to make him feel like shit. And I just had to say, all right, you know what? We're adults. We can move past this. I'm not insulting Tyler. I'm insulting the album. So
hey, at the end of the day, I'm willing to do whatever for the views. Like for the video matters more than
Tyler, as he just said, is a views prostitute. So let's exchange the money here and get right down to business. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't really
into the music itself. Yeah.
Yeah. The only song I had heard on here before was Mysterious Ways, just because I feel like that's one of those omnipresent rock radio songs, but it's still unlike the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I literally just did not have a foundation for what kind of rock band U2 even were. And I think it's a good summary of my feelings that I still don't really know. Like I saw on Rate Your Music, there was some people that were just like, glam rock is back in the reviews for this. And I'm just like, what?
Well, the thing to be aware of is that this was heavily influenced by, and Eno brought a lot of his approach to this, as he did with his work with David Bowie. And so the Berlin trilogy hangs heavy over the approach to the sound of this record, and just generally what it represents as well within the career as well. So obviously that the Berlin trilogy era is not Bowie's glam era, but I think people see some similarities between U2 and Bowie and the way they developed and certain aspects of their approach to rock music. And also, I think it's a testament to how difficult it is to describe the Edge's guitar sound on this record, which is various shades of disorienting. And I am sure you've got some thoughts on that.
No, I'm going to say one unabashed compliment that I have for this album from front to back is that the guitar playing, the guitar tones, pretty universally spectacular. Always my favorite part of any given song on here, whether it's the really iconic sound, it's kind of groovy and a little funky on Mysterious Ways, whether or not it's kind of just propulsive on some of the other ones. I guess I'm just drawn to that more than I am anything else. But even then, I can see the shades of the Berlin trilogy in broader strokes. But God help me, this album is so fucking vague. it's instrumentally vague. It's thematically and lyrically vague. And coupled with the fact that I don't like the voice, it's just so hard to fucking get into this. You start off with a song like Zoo Station. And this song is such a bizarre way to start an album. It feels plotting to me. There's a lot happening in it, but nothing substantial, nothing with momentum. I don't really care for like the processing on Bono's voice. Like I'd say that the song would be better without it, in fact. And lyrically it feels so nondescript. It's all functional, but I don't really find any of this impressive. And I think that's a huge problem for me throughout the entire record, is that, like, other than, Bono's voice, the most consistent complaint I have is just the actual, like, lyrical and thematic content here. It's hard for me to even dislike it, because I don't really feel like it's there. Like, there's some songs that I think, skirt over the line and they actually become kind of enjoyable. Even better than The Real Thing is decent. I like it well enough. Pretty sure this is one of the more coherent songs. It's about, like, trying to reconnect or establish a connection with someone you're in love with, or were in love with, or fallen out with, or have a complicated relationship with. The guitar tones are pretty great, but lyrically there's nothing for me to, like. Again, I can only give you a vague descriptor of the song, and I feel like it feels less of a impressionist collage of lyrics that give you an over idea of what they're, like, hinting at, like a Tom York situation, and more there are just some songs on here where I'm just kind of like, what is this song about? Like, most prominently, something like Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses, which is
I've got to say something about that song.
You know what, August? Go ahead and say something about this, because honestly, one of my biggest problems with this whole song is that I'm just like, the premise of this is so fucking weird, and I'm only think it's weird because I'm still not entirely certain I know what it's about. It's just like, no, go ahead, August.
You know what?
Please.
The best thing about this whole album for me was this song. Not because I like it, but because of a mental picture I formed in my head while listening to it. And because I think one thing about Achtung Baby is that a lot of its songs are taking influence from various points in musical history, various ideas, like Zeus Station's more of like a new wavy kind of angular bass and guitar track. Even Better Than the Real Thing is a little more influenced by the baggy Manchester kind of sound. Point being that these songs have like a diverse array of influences, very obviously and presently. And this was the song that was quite evidently influenced by Americana to some degree, the title being suggestive of that, and I think Bono's particular vocal tonalities and a lot of the song itself. But what was funny to me was picturing Morgan, the biggest Americana fan I know, listening to this song and absolutely seething.
I know that Morgan hates the Joshua Tree, which is like their full-on Americana album. Like, it's that Americana is soaked through to the DNA of that record.
Yeah. So I couldn't help but imagine Morgan listening to this song in particular and seething with rage. So that was just hilarious to me.
Note-wise for it, I think the best summary of it I can give is that I don't care who's going to ride this person's wild horses. Bono's trying to paint a picture of someone who, like, broke his heart, I guess, and is now like wondering who will ride their horses or drown in your sea. And, like, okay, like, maybe I'm missing something, but these songs largely are about very specific subjects that feel almost divorced from all legitimate meaning or emotion. Is this song embittered? Is this song nostalgic? The emotional tone is just very, very much lost on me. Same thing with my least favorite song on here, which trying to throw your arms around the world.
Yeah, I would
God,
agree. That's the only song on the record that I don't particularly care for, but I don't hate it.
Glad we can meet in the middle here then, because oh God, this song is insufferable. Nothing like if I had a problem grasping onto the meanings of songs before, this is fucking nonsense. Like the hook is repeated ad nauseum. Nothing here connects together, and the unbearable mid-tempo pace is downright purgatorial. It's vague and pointless and shouldn't fucking be here. It would improve the album's pace. It would be better sequencing. I simply do not care for it, especially it's such a letdown after, I'll admit it, I really love the song Mysterious Ways. I like it a lot. Bono puts enough fucking color and verve into his vocal performances combined with, a solid hook. And it's like the lyrics here are like strangely surreal in a way that's really evocative, and the rest of the album doesn't really have to me. And the guitar here is just fucking sexy. Like this is just easily the best song here for me. And then there, songs like Until the End of the World, where I can kind of see what it's going for. Like there's like some tribal drumming at the beginning, the guitar works good as usual. Bono's delivery of vocals feels weirdly out of step with the normal rhythm of the song. And one of the songs here that I just find the lyrics and sentiment almost actively annoying. The encounter that the main character makes with like the woman in this song, and like it makes him sound like a tool. Like, and like the vocalizings of love irritate the shit out of me. And it just has like it has like a weird and vague thing where it feels almost like condescending, like he's describing this person saying like, oh, it's until the end of the world. And I'm just like, can somebody please anchor me into this song with
Jake,
a fucking
do you know what's
like
funny about
context
this?
something?
You know what's funny about this? I don't think this will improve your opinion of the song, but it will at least explain the tone of it, which is that the song is about Judas's betrayal of Jesus.
Yeah,
and it's written from Judas's perspective.
I mean, that's the thing though. I feel like that's almost the perfect microcosm, because it's like, if you did not tell me that,
but
never figured that out.
The thing is, it works even if you don't have that reading, in my opinion anyway, but I have to get into the whole concept of the album to explain why.
Sure.
But I do think that that's not picking up on that. I don't think is a flaw. I just think that that's an extra element to what the song is about. And I think if you read the lyrics with that in mind, you can see it. But I think it's, I'm going to get into it if I keep going.
I'm a bit more generous with the front half of the album. I think the first, it's varying in terms of like mediocre to above average. And I do think that, Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses? Don't really care for that, so it sinks it a little bit. I think So Cruel is pretty good. This is at least a song that feels written by a character who is jaded and angry after the end of a tumultuous relationship. It has a better grasp of its emotional complexity. Instrumentally, it's a bit plotting, but I really like how it swells up with those strings. It's really decent sounding. Not without the occasional cringeworthy lyric. Her skin is pale like God's only dove, screams like an angel for your love. She makes you watch her from above. You need her like a drug. Cool.
You're robbing that of so much by delivering it in that way, but fair enough.
This is how Bono sounds to me. Oh, also one of my favorite lyrics on here is "The night is bleeding like a cut." Good fucking metaphor, Bono.
I like that lyric. Fuck me, right?
Yes. Fuck you. I hate you. You're disbanding the podcast. However, the album's final third is what really just wades it into a sea of nondescript mediocrity for me. I can feel, I don't even know how anyone feels about this song, but I feel like I'm going to incur the wrath of at least somebody by saying that I really don't like Ultraviolet. I identify with Bono because I feel like trash as well, frankly. This is the writing of the album at its most catatonically cliched, and instrumentally it's competent. Nothing here to dig into. The Ultraviolet hook is shitty and lazy. Bono and the guitar work are awake, I suppose. I will officially get it mandated that rock songs cannot contain usage of the word baby or lyrics that use light as a metaphor for love ever again after this song, because I can't do it anymore. Even bands I like, you're not allowed to do it. Stop it. I can't do this. Acrobat is fine. The thing about this song that I really like is once again, it's the guitar, but I love how hypnotic it feels. It's swirling, it's captivating. I really want more of the album to sound a little bit like this. In fact, this actually reminded me of all things. It reminded me of the Bends. It just sounds like an instrumental idea that I feel like Radiohead would have played with in that particular era. It's really enveloping. But once again, it's the lyrics that just feel like vague nonsense, occasionally kind of gross. Please, Bono, don't talk about swallowing, spitting, or vomiting in your pseudo-encouraging rock song. I could do without it. Love Is Blindness, not really a fan of the wonky and frankly kind of pitiably disappointing guitar solo midway through that stops this song for nothing. This is just, it's inoffensive, but like, what? Sure. I mean, the song just stops for the most mediocre thing on this album to just happen. And then there's fucking the fly, and Bono tells you a bunch of things that you already know, preceded by the phrase, "It's no secret." Thanks, Bono. I know it's no secret. I know that. Thank you for elaborating. And it's just like it's fucking hell. It's he sings about artists and poets that all kill their inspirations and sing about their grief, and it feels almost hilariously self-defeating, talking about how poets are thieves and stuff on this song, all this while singing a song that boils down to love sure is powerful. It's got a decent guitar solo. That's all the notes that I have on this album. I mean, look, I'm not going to tell you and sit here and think that I'm not going to meet this album halfway. I don't think it's very good. But at the same time, I can't really find it in me to summon, like, I wish I could summon maybe August's dislike of the Red Hot Chili Peppers album for this, but it's just, oh God, I don't care. It's so utterly forgettable, and I can't. I'm done, I promise.
So in my understanding of the band, this is them coming off of a point in their career where they've been basically labeled as pretentious hacks after their previous live album slash
Rattle and Hum.
Yeah, Rattle and Hum. That
yeah. Which incidentally, coming from me, sucks ass.
You're the first person I've ever heard say that. I've only heard great things about that album. Interesting.
That's widely divisive as far as I'm concerned, but probably the people around where you live might be more fond of it. I don't know. It's like it's very like Bono wishes he was American. Got a point.
Kentucky does suck.
Bono wishes he was American for 80 minutes or however long it is. It's not good.
Jesus. Anyway, this I share quite a few of Jake's kind of frustrations with the lyrics to this album, just generally feeling insubstantial to me at communicating a proper emotional tone. I found myself very not particularly compelled in a lot of moments. And in a sense, knowing where this album is coming from, knowing it's this reaction to being this called this kind of big, cheesy, bad band, essentially, after Rattle and Hum, knowing where this is coming from, I at the very least can like to think I understand where the impetus, where the idea for this type of record comes, making something so feel so larger than life, and but also trying to connect it with more tangibly emotional subject matters, which are I think addressed to varying degrees of quality across this album, because I do think there are moments I like. I find the aforementioned Zeus Station, I actually do enjoy the very angular drum and bass on this track. I think it adds to a nice heft and weight to it. That being said, when I try to feel more attentive to the lyrical content of it, I find myself a little lost with this album at points. Even better than the Real Things baggy Manchester influences, I enjoy enough. I think it's essentially the band kind of capitalizing on a large variety of sounds across this album, making something that is very much influenced by a ton of their contemporaries. And I think on every song you can kind of track down where the impetus for the song is coming from, what genre they're kind of taking and giving this very hazy, atmospheric, extra sheen to. But I just find it so overbearing and goofy. I don't find myself connecting with the emotional tonality of this record in the slightest. It feels like it completely rolls off of me and bores me. There are occasional instrumental ideas I do enjoy for the positive of this album. I quite like a lot of the guitar tones, as Jake has mentioned, but there are other ones like Who's Going to Ride Your Wild Horses that it puts me to sleep. That was a genuine yawn. I'm getting so tired talking about this.
I was gonna say, like, it's either an Oscar-worthy level integration of your joke there, or you are actually very tired.
A lot of parts there are like little moments I like. I think Adam Clayton's weird bass sound on So Cruel is a uniquely energizing instrumental. Bono tries to ruin it for me. He tries his damnedest. I just genuinely don't know what to do with most of this. It just leaves me so bored, so in the cold. I really just don't get it. It's kind of the best way I can phrase it.
He really does move in mysterious ways.
Okay.
Cheers, bro. I'll drink to that.
Okay.
Can't wait to rewatch this and just slowly see Tyler go from enthusiastic to near suicidal in the span of 15 minutes.
I'm sorry. Slowly. Okay, so this is an interesting position for me to be in. Not necessarily one I haven't been in before, but it's fine. I'm used to it now. So there's definitely one thing that we can't escape, which is that
this album sucks.
Which is that you guys fundamentally hate U2 and fundamentally hate everything about them. I think it's fair to say, except you sometimes think some of their The Edge's guitar licks are cool, but evidently his decision to name himself a fucking word has nullified all of that. Which whatever.
I mean, look, the outside context to this, I could give less of a shit about. I just don't find the music interesting. I don't find the writing interesting.
Yeah.
The production, you know what? Brian Eno, I respect the man. Daniel Lanois, I respect the man.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Well, look, yeah, no, fair enough. I fully believe you've both given this record your darndest effort, and I appreciate that. But also there's this fundamental difference between us in terms of the fact that I think that I find peak U2 to be like, and I mean like, and this is the thing, peak U2 I find to be genuinely like just adrenaline pumping. Like there's just something about the way that they sound. There's something about their larger than life, a bit like just scale of their music that I love. Like I'm a sucker for. I don't love all of U2's music. Everything after this record I find to be grating to downright anodyne. I think
their work with Julie Taymor's Spider-Man musical perhaps isn't your favorite.
This is the last gasp of real, like, I would say, like potently urgent creative energy, and I think that it's so intense and dense and layered and fascinating that I'm always captivated all the way through. I can't deny that Bono can be a facile lyricist, and I'm not going to make an argument that Bono is some lyrical genius. I don't think that he is. I think that the lyrical approach on this record is reasonably consistent in the sense that this record is reasonably based around a very particular theme that the songs all orient around, that I think is an interesting take on this particular theme that I'll get into, that I think that Bono communicates the emotion of well, even if he doesn't really have the poetic snuff to really like make all-timer holy shit lyrics. But to a certain extent with Bono, that doesn't matter to me. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't matter to you either, but it particularly doesn't matter to me the specifics of whether Bono is amazingly good at writing or not, particularly on this record, because there's so much happening in these songs. There's so much happening in these songs that he functions even better as a piece of the fabric of these tapestries. And I think that he is a really great fit for it. And I can't change the fact that Jake finds him fundamentally obnoxious as a vocal presence. I certainly can't. That's not something I can argue with. That's just an experience.
I can argue for. I concede it is 100% my problem.
But I do find Bono on this record really, really compelling as a vocal presence. And I love the range that Bono has and the ways in which he uses that range to accentuate certain songs and to add real punch to certain moments. I like the way that, for instance, on Zoo Station, you have a mixture of those crisp, clear, wordless, coo falsetto vocals that frankly sound so much to me like OK Computer era Tom York that it's like so disorienting at first whenever this record starts. I love the juxtaposition of that with the effects laden, distorted vocals. All of the stuff that's happening in the studio on this record, I absolutely adore. Like all of the little details and bells and whistles, I think add so much. And I think of this record and these songs, like a lot of my enjoyment comes from just how utterly taken I am with everything that is happening and the way that it all sounds so unique. And like you hear recognizable instruments and you hear recognizable sounds and musical approaches for arena rock music, but it's all produced and it's all made to sound different and wrong and strange. And I love that particular approach. And it manifests mostly in the guitar playing of The Edge and the drum work of Larry Mullen Jr., which I'll get into as I talk about these songs. So yeah, Zoo Station roars to life with that iconic distorted detuned riff. I love that. I love the sound of it. It's so fucking like, I also love just the way that even before that comes in, you get this like top of the fucking guitar neck picking against the mic that just has this really eerie sound that I love. I love the way this whole track and the album slowly comes into focus. Like element after element is added until you're immersed in the world of this opening track, which is essentially functions as just an introduction to the album, but it's such a flavorful and colorful and disorienting one that it's like, especially if you come off the back of the Joshua Tree, it's like, what the fuck? There's no way this is the same band. This sounds nothing like this band at all. And then, except you're like, oh yeah, there's Bono has that recognizable voice, and you hear hints of the Edge's like twangy, iconic guitar sound, the Where the Streets Have No Name guitar sound, the With or Without You guitar sound that's so like specific to him, but also so classic and pretty feeling. You hear hints of that, but it's like little fucking bubbles of it that float over top of this sea of just fucking grungy, just deep stomach churning sounds. I love that shit. I love what a feast of strange and bizarre sounds the song is. And I love the way it sets you up to expect and experience these kinds of strange tapestry constructions through studio effects and through layering and through mixing and through performance that the rest of the record will explore in different ways. And so, yeah, I love that aspect of it. It's a great opener. I like that its purpose is more than anything to disorient and bewilder listeners. And I like that it also shows as well, because much like Radiohead's Airbag is, and I think you can draw a lot of comparisons in terms of sound between this and a record like OK Computer. And I think much like Airbag, it's like it introduces you to the way that this new era of the band is going to sound. And it also gives a chance for you to become aware of how acutely excellent each individual band member is at what they do. A bit that I'm sad August isn't here to hear me say this, but a bit that August has made in the past and that other people have made a kind of joke is that, oh yeah, U2, because it's Bono and The Edge, and who the fuck else cares who else is in the band? And that definitely rubs U2 fans the wrong way, and it absolutely rubs me the wrong way, because I think that the contributions of Adam Clayton and Larry Mullen Jr. are fantastic on this record. Very personality, like they have their own style and personality that doesn't make them feel like anonymous band members, and they contribute in such vital ways to these songs that this is a great example of a rock band working together as a four-piece unit where each member has their own input, making this record that has a very singular sound that sounds like nothing else, and making a bunch of classic songs in the process. I don't think the record is perfect, and I'll get into the limitations and slight weaknesses that I have with it as well. But I do think that that aspect of it, that framing and that sense of weight that you get from all four of them, as well as a perfect production team of Eno, of Lanoy, of Steve Lillywhite of XTC fame, and of Flood as well, Martin Flood, who is an all-timer producer. So yeah, there's that. Something that I think gets forgotten, and is how integral in their heyday every single member of the band is to their sound. Larry Mullen Jr.'s drumming, and especially Adam Clayton's bass work, is infectious, detailed, creative, even unusual, whether in melody and pattern or just in texture through the filters of the production. And that production is astounding. It has to be said that this record arose out of a period of great creative stagnation for U2. It was a labored process to get this record up and running, to get the recording process started. And a lot of what activated it and ignited it is the feedback of Eno and Lanoy, who helps, particularly Eno, helped to resolve the tensions within band members about which direction this record should take. It might surprise you to hear that Bono is the person who wanted to make U2 as weird and unpopular as possible. And this was the beginning of a shift in that direction that would continue to go further with their albums Zooropa and Pop, which just go way down the rabbit hole into like just reacting against U2's size and grandeur. And this is another part of the misconceptions about U2, is that they had this desire to be this completely world taking over thing. And at certain points in their career, I sense they have had that. But at this era, they were very much retreating from that. And a lot of the, I guess, neuroses and insecurity that manifests through this music and through what Bono sings about is a neat little hint and encapsulation of that. And also, Zoo Station is also notable because it introduces the loose concept of the record, which is a modern retelling of James Joyce's Ulysses, and also the key theme that overarches this entire record as well, which I'll get into with one particular track, which I'm going to get to in a minute. The Edge's guitar on Even Better Than the Real Thing has this weird, vaguely Eastern twang to it that's also kind of filtered through a blues aesthetic. And so the result of that is this gorgeously unique tone that's like part Eastern, part blues, and I've never heard it anywhere else. And this is a song about where Bono writes about the kind of vapid trappings of fame, the way you're treated, the things that you experience, the sort of emptiness that inspires. And I think it is fair to say that compared to the very heart on sleeve lyricism of the Joshua Tree, this record still has some of that, but there's also a kind of a bitter, sour tone to the writing on this record that's also like mirrored in the way the music is a bitter, sour reaction to the more polished stuff they've done up to this point. The reason for all of this, as well as just being a reaction to the big record and reaction to the sound they built up, was that U2 were in a dire straits, were in a really harsh place, in a really negative emotional space at this point in time. The Edge had just gone through a very acrimonious divorce, and the tensions between band members, as I've alluded to, were at an all-time high. And so as a result of this, a lot of the songwriting on this record is informed by that state of mind. And this manifests in a song that I can't believe no one has mentioned, one of the most classic all-time U2 songs, the track One, which is... this is actually the song that kickstarted the writing sessions for this album, following a period of stagnation. And it's also famously one of the most misinterpreted U2 songs ever. This is not a bleeding heart love song. This is a song about how facile the whole one love is all we need mentality is. And it's quite powerful in the way that it goes about doing that. Like Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen, it is a scathing critique of the sort of mindless sloganeering that people who have no interest in paying attention think that it's just endorsing. And I think that this song and that song are beautiful encapsulations of this kind of misinterpretation that happens with all of these big songs. And this is this also the song that introduces kind of the biggest theme of the record that Bono circles back to multiple times, which is the idea of love as a source of mutual pain and suffering for the two people involved, because of how much it demands that you give yourself to it, the way that it's a surrender of freedom that we willingly choose to engage in, because for many of us, it's ironically more freeing to give up control. And that's a beautiful idea that this record explores in various different ways, or speaks about, that Bono speaks about in various different ways. The way that love can be this doomed and hopeless and destructive thing, but yet the beauty in it is that it is all of those things, and yet its power is still so strong that we can't resist it in spite of that, which might be something that some people see in a pessimistic light, but I think Bono sees as this kind of beautiful thing that's also, you know, heartbreaking at the same time. There's a lot of sadness and there's a lot of just genuine pain in this record. With the song One, there's also the subtext of the AIDS crisis, which heavily informs this song, something Bono had written about before. In the second verse of this song, especially has sort of lyrics that allude to this. Did I disappoint you or leave a bad taste in your mouth? You act like you never had love and you want me to go without. So there's a subtext in the song of the current sort of in the world at the time attitudes towards AIDS and people with AIDS and gay people. Like, it was a very big talking point at this particular point in time. The single cover art for this track had a piece of art that was made by an artist about the AIDS crisis. And so it's both a song about the pressures within a relationship that is falling apart. There's a song about the facile nature of sloganeering, and it is a song about the inability for people to really understand each other because of the barriers that they put up in front of each other. And it's beautiful. I absolutely adore this song so much. I love that the line at the end of the song is, one life, but we're not the same, we get to carry each other, as opposed to we've got to carry each other. The latter sentiment is moving enough, but the former sentiment, we get to carry each other, is much more emotional to me. Someone trying to appeal to another person who has shut themselves off by caring, by saying, not by saying we have to care, but by saying that having the opportunity to care for someone is the joy itself. And regardless of how that caring and love pans out, having that opportunity, having that ability to feel that way, and that ability to empathize and love is, what it's all about. And just generally, I find the way that this song swells, the way the guitar gradually gets more twangy and loud, and then Bono's final falsetto croons at the climax of the song to be breathtaking. I unabashedly adore One. I think it's a masterpiece of a song and deservingly one of their most beloved songs ever. I've alluded before to Until the End of the World and that song. Bono loves to write about biblical stories in ways that deliberately takes them out of their original context. And Until the End of the World is a textbook example of one of those, based on the story of Judas' betrayal of Jesus. But it also works as a kind of like mirror image of One, the cynicism of a person who has left their lover or partner out to dry, that gradually curdles into guilt and resentment of oneself. It's a great little piece of storytelling, subtle, not super detailed, but enough to get that feeling across. Some of the Edge's best work is here. His guitar tone in this track I can only describe as joyous and infectious. I love the way that Lanois uses panning and studio effects to stretch and distort and build it up. The way that the guitar sounds on these classic period U2 records is as much about what Eno, Lanois, and The Edge are doing with the sound in the studio as it is about the actual playing itself. And I love the way that these three together expanded the possibilities and boundaries of how the guitar could sound in fresh and arresting ways. And I know that there's a lot of sentiment that goes around that The Edge is like super overrated as a guitarist or whatever, and I don't even want to wade into that. But I do think that with Joshua Tree and with this record, The Edge, in tandem with those producers, did change the way the guitar, or did introduce a new way that the guitar could sound. And I find it intoxicating and thrilling. The theme of separation and of relationships falling apart is all over this record, as I've mentioned. And I've also mentioned that that is particularly because the Edge was in the middle of a particularly painful divorce, and the tensions between the band members over the creative direction after Joshua Tree were at an all-time high. This, I think, is reflected in songs like Wild Horses and So Cruel at the center of the record. Wild Horses, I think, is a good song, but I also have very little to say about it. I think it's pretty standard. It's probably my second least favorite track on this record, so I can't take too much away from what's already been said about that. So Cruel, however, has this nifty trip-hop-esque beat, which again, coming at the time when the song did, before or just as trip-hop was even starting to become a thing, was very ahead of the curve work from Larry Mullen Jr., and love it. The album's sound engineer, Flood, really shines here, taking what was originally an acoustic demo track and turning it into this wall of layered sound. It elevates what is ostensibly just a mid-album intermission type of song into something much more interesting, especially when, as has already been mentioned, Adam Clayton's muscular bass comes in to support the track. It sounds awesome, and I really love it. These songs, however, at the center of the record, Wild Horses and So Cruel, are merely decent in my opinion compared to The Fly, which is my favorite song on this album and one of the most classic, perfect songs that U2 ever made. The Edge's skronking, heavily distorted guitar tone is fucking addictive. The song's rhythm section is intense and layered, and I actually think you guys have spoken on the Manchester influence on Even Better Than the Real Thing. I think that comes into the fore even more prominently on this track. The shades of Happy Mondays and of course Primal Scream, who we discussed just a few weeks ago, weaved into the song masterfully. And all of this is before you get to Bono's falsetto over the chorus, which, I don't know, man, that falsetto in this song specifically, it just does something to me. It hits a switch in my brain. It makes me a lump in my throat when I hear it. And look, in context matters as well, because that falsetto is emerging in a song that is laden with screeching, howling noise from the guitar. The solo that Edge lays down on this track is one of the most incandescent things he's ever laid to tape. My fucking God, I can't fucking believe my ears every time I hear it still. I love the way that even when Bono's falsetto comes back in over it at the end of the song, the guitar solo is just so fucking loud it almost swallows his voice entirely. The intensity the band reach at the peak of this song is utterly transcendent in my opinion, and I'm being over the top there, but fuck, I love this song. Mysterious Ways, is the album's biggest hit. And because of its overplay, it can be easy to overlook, again, just how much cool shit is happening on it, how psychedelic that rhythm section is, of course, how squelching and scummy and fucking filthy that guitar is. I swear it hits a fucking switch in my brain, especially that little mini solo that he does in the midsection of the song with the strings sweeping around it. It's such a great fucking detail. I love how even for years I heard this song on the radio and I was like, this is all right. And then you really focus in, you're like, actually, this song is fucking crazy. This was a hit, because listen to it. It sounds fucking demented. I just love that shit. I definitely concur with the sentiment that Trying to Throw Your Arms Around the World is a weak spot. It's definitely the least essential song here. I don't hate it though. I think it's just fine. I don't have that animosity that Jake has towards it. I just think it's like, okay, sure. That said, I am going to buck away from Jake hardcore and say that I absolutely adore Ultraviolet. For some reason, Ultraviolet feels like a song that has always been in my life. Maybe I heard it when I was a little kid, but as soon as that guitar kicks in, along with those drums and that bassy synth, I feel home again. It's purely comforting in a way that many of the best U2 songs are. It is an unabashedly Bono-esque love song. The lyricism on this track is undeniably pretty straight. Like, there's not a lot happening here lyrically. I don't give a shit, frankly. I love the little in-band detail that the song actually originated as an in-joke between the band members about how somehow Bono had never before sung the word baby in a song. And so he went ahead and sung it like 50 times in this song. And which is also essentially the source of the album title, which is like, Achtung Baby. Anyway, forget that. This is a great example. This song is a great example of build and release from Bono as a vocalist. The way he gradually escalates his voice as the song goes on, the fucking synergy and harmony between his wordless croons and the insistent effects-laden guitar is like fucking honey to me. And I'm not saying that the lyrical critiques you guys have lobbed here are invalid. They're absolutely valid. But I think one thing that they miss, and obviously not for Jay because he hates the way Bono's voice sounds, but one thing they miss for me is that the lyrics don't matter as much as just what Bono is doing with his voice, the way he uses his voice, apart from the things that he says, which I don't particularly care if it's a little bit facile, because there's plenty of great songwriting on this record that I've already touched on with songs like One. But what he's doing with his voice and the way it's interacting with every other band member's contributions is just amazing to me. I love the way that as this song goes on, his vocal gets more intense, loud, emotive, and the guitar gets more distorted and intrusive in response to him. The beautiful joy of U2, and of this album in particular for me, is that when the songs are about love and relationships, as they often are, the musical level of that is there as a mirror to the lyrics. What Bono is talking about in terms of the desire for connection between him and this person in his life is one thing. But what makes the song so powerful is the way that it is reflected in the way that Bono and The Edge and Larry Mullen Jr. and Adam Clayton are playing off each other in tandem as performers. Bono and The Edge in particular, the relationship theme of the song is mirrored in the synergy and the back and forth between these two men as performers. There's even a kind of like homoerotic sexual energy between the way the two of them play off of each other that I'm undoubtedly reading into a little bit, but just there's something about the way they go together, Bono's voice and Edge's guitar sound, that feels like these two things were made for each other and would not work at all without each other. And I think there's no better and greater encapsulation of this than the climactic point of this track. I love how radiant and beautiful the guitar gets at the end of the song as well. It's all perfect. It gives me chills. I love it so much. For just a few minutes, I can genuinely see how U2 were the biggest band in the world and why those people at that time kept coming back to them for a glimpse of that thrill, even as it, receded into the distance quickly after this record. The particular joy of peak U2 for me is how much they just own the fact that they want to be the biggest band in the world, both in terms of sound and reach, and don't shy away from that desire or try to modestly cover it up. That said, even if The Fly and Ultraviolet are my favorite songs as a whole, on this album, my favorite instrumental part of this whole record is every single second of what The Edge is doing with his guitar on Acrobat. This song rivals The Fly for sheer fucking incredible, holy shit, what the fuck is he doing impact. And again, that synergy and relationship between him and Bono is evident here and elevates both of them, but particularly Edge, because again, the guitar in this track is unreal. It's so dominant, it's virtuosic, it almost overtakes every other element of the track. But Mullen and Clayton are still there, the rhythm section is still there, they're putting their entire fucking pussy into it to the point where the result is just a triumphant success for the entire band. I can't believe there was a point in time where I thought this was a weak track. I listen to it now and it's like a buffet. I'm practically overwhelmed by how much there is to choose from, and I want all of it. Listen to the way, like literally just listen to the song and the way the Edge builds and builds and builds in the guitar to the point where he is practically soloing constantly. And the band are just continuing over top of him. And then Bono's just singing over top of him because he's the force to be reckoned with. You can't stop him. So you just keep going with the song, even as he's losing his mind. He's having a fucking breakdown. It's a fitting climax for the record. And then it's followed by, in my opinion, a perfect conclusion. Love Is Blindness ties all variations on the record's singular theme that I've mentioned earlier of relationships as these mutually destructive endeavors that nonetheless provide a feeling so addictive, so potent that it's worth the pain. Some have interpreted this as the darkest, or at least the most pessimistic U2 song, and while it certainly has that tone, I see a freedom in Bono's description of the overwhelming loss of control that comes with falling in love. And I think that is his general thesis, that even when something ends in a ball of flames and a world of pain, it's still worth it in some way. And again, to come back to The Edge, listen to how, I know Jake hates it, but listen to how powerfully he's playing in a subtler way here. And it's not all about taking over the track and dominating like it was on the last two songs, but it's about adding a subtle, bluesy, but devastating flavor that elevates the song. He lingers in these distorted, hollow, reverberating tones that are very Eno-esque, honestly. Recall some of Eno's earliest records where he was really doing that squalling guitar sound with Robert Fripp. It has this distortion in it that sounds about as mournful as a distortion ever has. It actually reminds me of the one-note distorted guitar solo in Talks After the Flood. It's a very similar feel to me, and ends the record in this really like just emotional gut punch of a place. And look, I know we're speaking different languages here, and that's just a fact of life and something that happens. And God bless you, God bless me, God bless all of us. May we never talk about U2 again.
No.
Here.
Yeah. No, I have some closing remarks though. You know what? I think what you said about this whole album and its whole themes of mutually destructive relationships, I think that's all very fascinating and almost reflective of this podcast in a sense, this review. If I may close, U2, that's the letter U and the numeral 2. They're a four-man band featuring Adam Clayton on bass, Larry Mullen on drums, Dave Evans, nicknamed The Edge. This is bullshit. Nobody cares. These guys are from England, and who gives a shit?
Yes.
The letter U and the numeral 2.
These guys are from England, and who gives a shit?
Thank you, Casey Kasem, for laying down those bars for us. And thank you, Negative Land, for bringing those bars into our lives. Favorite tracks and ratings?
Tyler,
yeah, I'll go first.
Start this off.
My favorite song, as I said, is The Fly. My second favorite song is One. And my third favorite song is it's probably Acrobat, actually. It's really close between that and Ultraviolet, but I just can't get over how fucking homicidal the Edge sounds on Acrobat. Least favorite track, Trying to Throw Your Arms Around the World. It's fine. And the album gets a 9 from me.
All right, 3 favorite songs for me here. I liked Zeus Station a fair bit. think Until the End of the World isn't bad. And you know what I like enough of So Cruel that I'll list it. Trying to throw your arms around the world, stupid, bad. 4.5 out of 10.
Okay.
My favorite song is Mysterious Ways. Then So Cruel. Then Even Better Than the Real Thing. Least favorite, Trying to Throw Your Arms Around the Entire goddamn planet. 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we would never be talking about U2 if it weren't for this retrospective. So that's one little itch that's been scratched. Although, yeah, I'm pleased to have an avenue to get to talk about why I do love this record, even if I'm on an island. That's a rating of 5.8.
Island.
Yeah, Prison Island. That's right. So
Know your place.
yeah, I know where I know my place. I know where I'm from. Better fucking
Yeah, damn you and your gorgeous vistas and beautiful weather and pretty people and nice
And
accents
not America.
and not being America.
Yeah, true that.
Yeah. Tell it
say
like it
it's-
is.
Okay.
On
Well,
that note,
let us know what you think of Achtung Baby in the comments below. Is it your favorite U2 record? How do you feel about U2 in general? Which side of the fucking wall do you come down on? And yeah, let us know in the comments below. We want to hear from you. And next week on the 1991 retrospective, we will be talking about Teenage Fanclub's Bandwagonesque, which
this is one I've brought to the retrospective, as a matter of fact. So
Yeah,
this is going to be
it's the only album in the retrospective that I haven't heard. So
yeah.
I get to be you guys having no context coming to it.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the only one I've heard beforehand and no one else has. So that will be a lot of fun for me.
Indeed. Absolutely. And so it remains to August to say good night.
As always, everyone, rock over London, rock on Chicago. Guinness is good for you.